Hey pros, Crystal here from Elite Hair Care USA. So today my client came in and decided that she wanted to go ahead and go on the smooth side. So we're going to be giving her a full relaxer, which is a virgin relaxer. She also has some traction alopecia going on the hairline. Want to see the process? Stay tuned. So to start this process, we went ahead and did what we call a virgin relaxer. So for those of you that don't know what a virgin relaxer is, this is basically a relaxer for a client who is just that. They are virgin, they are natural, they do not have a relaxer currently. So if you guys can tell, I'm starting from the mid shaft to the ends, and then I will go through the root area and straighten that area as well. Now, of course, as I always say, if you are interested in relaxing your hair or doing any form of chemical service, I highly recommend speaking with a licensed cosmetologist who has a skill in this area. And then, of course, I do not recommend you guys doing relaxers at home. But of course, if you don't have a choice, you do what you have to do. Just watch this video and I'm going to give you guys all the deets. So once we finish putting the relaxer on the mid shaft and then the ends, now is when I'm going through and just applying the relaxer to her root area. Now the reason for me not applying it to the root area first is of course because she has a heat zone and that relaxer is going to process really, really quickly. And this is also how you get uneven processing because the heat zone causes that process of relaxer straightening the hair to actually speed up. So we have a heat zone. That heat zone is about 1 inch away from the head itself. And that is the reason why when we're doing relaxers, especially virgin relaxers, that you want to do the ends first because the ends do not have a heat zone. So they process a little bit slower. And then you work your way to the roots. This is also going to help to ensure that you get even processing, that you don't have a lot of irritation because the relaxer does sit on the hair a little bit longer than normal. And to also ensure that you don't over process the root area trying to straighten out the ends. So now that the relaxer has fully processed, I'm going to go ahead and rinse her. We're going to condition and shampoo her as well. Now, here's something that I want to explain when we talk about relaxers, you guys. Not everybody wants to be natural. Natural does not work for everyone. So this is a no judge zone. I tell you guys this all the time. I am team whatever works for you and whatever keeps you comfortable and whatever allows you to take good care of your hair. So for her, she made the decision that she wanted to be relaxed, which is a-okay with me. And then, of course, whenever you relax the hair, it is going to decrease the density in the hair. It is just that, you guys, a relaxer. So the hair is not going to have a ton of density because the cuticle in the actual hair shaft is now straight, whereas before it was more textured, wavy, curly, kinky, whatever you want to call it. But her hair texture does not actually change. And when I say her hair texture doesn't change, hair texture is fine, medium, and coarse. If she had medium textured hair while she was in her virgin or natural state, she's going to have medium textured hair once she's relaxed. If she had fine textured virgin or natural hair, she's going to have fine textured relaxed hair. So the relaxer does not actually change the texture per se. And when I say the texture, that means the density, the number of strands of hair per square inch of the head. That is not going to change because you relaxed your hair. You're going to have the same number of strands that you would have had you kept it in the natural state. But remember, when you're virgin, the hair grows out and in a curly or wavy state, so it gives the appearance that you have a lot of fullness. When you relax that texture and you allow it to now redo that, relax or lay down, it is going to go flat. You're going to have less density, of course, but you're going to still have the same number of strands. So that's something that I like to explain because people say, oh, when I relaxed my hair was a lot thinner. Your hair was actually thin from the beginning. It just, the texture was more pronounced when it came on to, your wave or your curl pattern. Whereas when it's relaxed, it's going bone straight. So just keep that in mind when you guys are making your decisions for your hair. So now that we've concluded the couple minutes of conditioning action, now is when we're going to go ahead and normalize or neutralize her. For those of you that don't know what normalizing or neutralizing is, that is basically restoring the hair back to its regular pH. If you decide to skip normalizing or neutralizing, please keep in mind that you can shed a lot later on. It might not happen today. It will happen over time. Number 2, you can start having or experiencing a lot of breakage. And number 3, you start noticing that the hair gets a lot thinner and it's getting thinner and thinner and thinner because you did not restore the hair back to its regular pH, the healthy pH, the safe pH that it needs. pH is important when we talk about hair. It is basically all of our body in its entirety. Also, this is another reason why when people swim in chlorine chlorinated water, why we always say you have to use a dechlorinizing shampoo, because guess what? Chlorine changes the pH in the hair as well, and over time that hair gets dehydrated and begins to shed. So keep that in mind as well. So here we are going to be applying some hair color to her roots. Now I am applying a semi-permanent color. I have gotten away from using demi and permanent colors unless absolutely necessary. So the semi-permanent color is actually a lot healthier for the hair because it is a deposit-only color, and it also helps to give the hair the appearance of fullness. Hence the reason why we say that semi-permanent is healthier, because semi-permanent colors fill the cuticle. So the cuticle has what we call holes or scales, just like the roof, the shingles on a roof. And semi-permanent hair color helps to fill in those gaps in between the shingles, or those gaps or those holes, by just basically covering up that hole and allowing the hair to look a lot fuller than it was before you did the color. Now, this is not only with semi-permanent colors, but the healthiest alternative to hair coloring for those of you who have fragile hair or you're trying to just get your hair back into a healthy state. Semi-permanent color is the way to go. This is also the color that you can buy in the stores, at which you can buy any of the other colors, but this is the safest one that I would say for at-home use, unless you have professional instruction or you are trained and understand how hair color works. By the way, because I know some of you are going to ask, the color that I'm using, this is the Clairol Gray Solution semi-permanent hair color. I do have this color in my Amazon store if you click the link in the description box, or if you go to crystalsamazonstore.com, that will also take you to my Amazon store where you're able to get this Clairol Gray Solution color. This is my go-to color for gray coverage in a semi-permanent stance because it really does the job and it gives great coverage. All right, so now that she is colored and dry, I'm just going through with my blow dryer and a paddle brush just to kind of straighten her hair out a little bit. So we decided that we're going to add a couple tracks to her hair. We are using bonding glue, which is an adhesive, you guys. Now, with bonding glue, you do still want to make sure that you're taking good care on your application and you're also doing your application correctly, because a little too much glue or the wrong placement can cause a whole nother situation for you. So I'm going to show you guys today how I do my bonding tracks and give you guys a couple of pro tips for those of you that may think about one day having, extensions with the bonding method. Now, of course, before I bonded in the tracks, I went ahead and did her trim. That is super important. Even though I know that I'm going to be putting in tracks that are a little bit longer than her hair, this is a virgin relaxer, so I did not want to skip the trim, even though we run the risk of having a couple of blunt ends in between the extensions. But to be quite honest, you guys, this is not a step that I would skip, especially if you are coming from a virgin state to a fully relaxed state, because those split ends can become overwhelming if you leave them the way they are. And you guys know I'm big on our trim schedule. So let's see who actually remembers. I want you guys to comment down below and tell me, what is the trim schedule for relaxed hair and what is the trim schedule for natural hair? Let's see who's really a pro here, because we talk about this every day. Now, once her trim is complete, this is the time when I'm going to be adding her extensions, okay? So we are using pack hair. It's not bundle hair. When I say pack hair, meaning hair that you buy at the beauty supply store. It comes in a pack, but it is of good quality. So I always say, if you're going to buy extensions and you're doing something to blend with your hair, try not to get the hair that is super cheap, but you also don't need to get hair that's super expensive. So there's a good median in between. And typically, the hair that you're going to be using is going to be behind the counter and not in front of the counter. Now, before I put her tracks in, I went ahead and used a little bit of heat just to kind of straighten her out. Now, because she's relaxed, that doesn't mean that her hair is going to be bone straight and I don't have to put any type of heat towards it. You do still want the hair to be nice and silky. So I'm using the H2 Pro 1-inch ceramic black diamond iron. This is the Pro Iron. And this is what I'm using just to kind of silk her out. It's nothing to like make her bob ready, but I do just want to make sure that the hair is prepared for us to put the extensions in, where I don't have to go back through and silk her track by track or row by row, because the hair is already nice and straight. So now is the time where we're going to go ahead and add her extensions. So I did go ahead and pre-part her. The hair that we use is definitely her color, if you guys can tell. When you're doing tracks that you want to blend with your hair, I highly recommend getting as close to your color or the color that you will be as possible. Now, when I do my bond-in tracks for clients where I'm putting it in between their hair, I like to use the U part or U method, horseshoe method, dip method. You can call it almost any one of those names. Now, what this does is it elevates the actual track. So the placement is in the shape of a horseshoe or a U. So we start from the crown and we dip it down into the nape and go back around to the crown. The reason for this is, number one, it's going to allow us to not have a lot of extensions on the weakest parts of her head, which, as you guys can tell, her hairline is very sparse. Number two, it's going to give her a more natural look because the hair is going to cascade more towards the face and take away a lot of that bulkiness. If you put the tracks in like a block, her head is going to be shaped like a block. Okay, so you want this placement to kind of mimic how the hair naturally grows on its own, number one. And number two, you don't want to run the risk of putting too much bulk in the wrong place. Now, when I also do my tracks, I like to double my tracks, but I do not double them one on top of the other before I bond it in. That is how you get bulky tracks. I actually lay each track one at a time, and then I will lay the next track right on top in almost like a brick lay form. So you'll see that in the video. You won't see it super up close, but you'll see exactly what I mean when I say I don't double the tracks or pre-double the tracks. I double the tracks as I'm doing the application. So you'll see for yourself. Also, with the adhesive that we're using, this is bonding glue. You do want to make sure that your adhesive is placed onto the weft only. And you want to make sure that you are giving it an even stream of adhesive and you're not being too heavy-handed. The more glue you have on the track, the more glue you run the risk of getting onto the hair. So keep that in mind. So now I'm going to go ahead and place the second track, which the reason for double track is number one, so she doesn't have a million tracks in her head. Okay. She has a good amount of density, so I'm able to have good coverage. But you also want to be able to cover more ground with less rows of tracks. So the less rows, the more natural it looks. That's number one. The less rows, the less weight on her head. That's number two. And the less rows, the easier it is to blend when you get to the crown area. So you'll see for yourself when we're done with the service what we were able to achieve with just a couple of rows of tracks rather than us having 15 different rows of tracks. And then she has a ton of extensions all over the place. It can get really messy really quickly. So my track placement, my adhesive placement, I literally take that so serious. Like, I don't like adhesive all over the place. And I also put my adhesive and my tracks in the part and not on the hair. Sometimes you might have a little bit of the track onto the client's hair, but that easily can come right out. It doesn't really take much. And then, of course, when the client is removing their tracks, I always tell them to just jump in the shower and shampoo your hair like you normally would. Nothing complicated. So I'm going to stop talking and let you guys watch the remaining placement of the tracks, and then we'll go from there. By the way, I wasn't cutting her hair, you guys. There was a piece of hair that had some adhesive on it, so I went ahead and cut it off. But that's not going to affect the style. All right, so we just completed 2 rows of extensions just that fast. You guys can see the coverage that we were able to achieve with those double row tracks where she only had 2 rows. Now here is where you want to change your placement. Once you get to the point where you're like really close to the crown or you're almost in the crown, here is where you want to kind of change your direction. Because remember, from the crown down to the occipital bone, down to the nape, that area all grows in one direction. So if you keep horseshoeing, you're not going to be able to have good coverage. That's number one. Number two, you run the risk of exposing the tracks and it's going to look very awkward because that is not the way the hair grows. So here I'm actually putting a much shorter track where I'm going from one side of the head to touch the other side of the head in between the actual tracks. So it's from one track on the left side of the head and it's going to the other side of the head where the right side of the track is, and it will basically sit not necessarily on the track, but right in front of it. So you guys will see that part for yourself as well. This is how we're actually going to finish out the bonding service, because we've already created the density for her by doing those U-part tracks or dip tracks or horseshoe tracks. Now we're just closing it out and giving her enough extensions to blend with her hair. Here's a rule of thumb. If you leave a ton of hair out, you are not going to be able to blend it with this hair unless you're doing a short style. When you're doing longer styles, you want to make sure that you have enough hair for coverage and you also have enough hair for blending. All right, so now we are done adding the extensions to her hair. Now, of course, at the top or the crown, you do want to make sure that you leave enough hair for coverage, okay? If you feel that you need to add a little more extensions or you need another row of extensions, what I recommend is parting in between your two U tracks and adding another U track there, and that will give you the extra density that you're looking for. Now, here's another rule of thumb. If you have fine textured hair and you're looking for a lot of volume, but you're adding hair that's a lot longer than yours, it is going to take a lot more hair. So if you're trying to look like you have tons of volume, then you probably would not do bond-in tracks. I'd probably recommend that you get a full coverage quick weave or something of that nature. The reason for that is you can only put but so many tracks into the hair before it starts to look very unnatural and before it starts to get very heavy. And that's another reason why it really just depends on the style that you're going for. That is going to determine the safest route that you're going to use for your tracks or your style, and if you are going to do in-between tracks or a full bond-in. You will never be able to look like you have this full voluptuous bob if you are doing bond-in tracks and just adding a couple pieces in between, unless your hair texture can support that. Most people with fine textured hair, you can't really go too far with extensions because it starts to build weight on the side of the head. And then it also is very hard to blend later on. So keep that in mind, you guys. If you are one of those where you're used to wearing wigs or sew-ins, this is going to be very different for you because this particular application is really made to look more natural and not so full. This is made to really look like how natural hair grows when you're fine textured, medium textured, or even coarse textured. So use that to make your decision of what application works best for you. All right, you guys, so we're almost at the end of the service. Now all we're going to do is just spray her with a little bit of Sebastian Shaper. We're going to just give her a quick bump, blend her. We're also going to add a little bit of keratin hair fibers to give a little blend up in the crown area. And then she is out the door. We'll also talk a little bit about her aftercare once we get closer to the end of the style. But I'm going to stop talking again because you guys know I can talk. But before I do, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Please don't forget to also thumbs up this video and share the video with your family and friends by just hitting that arrow button and hitting the share button. Also, you guys, this is the final day to RSVP for our royalty baby shower, which is the virtual shower on June the 4th. And then, of course, if you'd like to RSVP, go to royaltyiscoming.com. And, of course, for our elite hair care products, visit elitehaircareusa.com. All right, let's talk a little bit about aftercare. Really, guys, all she has to do is wrap her hair at night. It's just that simple. So she can use a stocking cap, she can use a bandana, she can use whatever works for her. I just don't use a bonnet. I do not recommend using a bonnet to protect your hair at night. But all she'll do is she'll wrap her hair like she normally would. Of course, her goal is to keep the tracks nice and flat. So she's going to do what we call the down and around method. That keeps the tracks from flipping. This is not a flip track kind of style. You want to keep the tracks nice and flat, so it keeps your hair nice and flat. But let's talk about this blendage here. Let's talk about how this hair looks just like hers and how it looks like she just grew this hair out of her scalp. Thank you. I appreciate you. Anyway, guys, this is just really easy for her. She won't put any excess oils in her hair. That's super important. And then I always recommend not using too much product, period, after this, unless it's time for you to remove the actual style. Now, what I'm doing, this is another pro tip for those of you who like bond-in tracks. A great way to blend your hair with the weft of the hair or the extensions that you are closing off your crown with is by adding a little bit of keratin hair fibers. If you guys have our masket, you can use that. If not, you can use any other company you choose. But what this does is create that darkened effect between that demarcation or that line of demarcation between your hair and the weft of the extensions. Now, it doesn't change the bumpiness or the lumpiness, so you have to make sure that your application is correct. But what it's going to do is fill in that gap or that bridge between your hair and the weft of the extensions. And it works really, really well because it only takes a very small amount. You don't have to do this all the time. And what you do is you'll lift up your hair and put a little bit of the keratin fibers between your hair and the weft of the actual extension hair. And you'll see how easily that weft disappears. Other than that, you guys, I'm just giving her another little bump, going through just making sure that her cut is right and everything is blended really, really well. And then she is out the door. So in the meantime, if you guys watching the style, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also comment down below what you guys thought about the finished product. And then, of course, I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay tuned at the end to get a coupon code for those of you that are new to my channel, where you'll be able to get 30% off of our Elite Hair Care products. Thanks for watching, you guys. Peace out.